Breaking ancestral patterns is not easy work. It can feel super lonely, it can feel confusing, but it is also one of the most courageous acts a person can take. Because when you change a script, you do not just change your life. You change the future of every single person who comes after you. You become the moment in the family story where the pattern ended and a new one began. Hi friends, welcome back to Cut with Angelique. We're going to get right into this today. If you do absolutely nothing in this life, learn to master your energy before someone else writes the script for you. Because so many of us are walking around carrying stories that were written long before we were born. Stories about love, about power, about silence, about what we think we deserve, about who we are in this world and how we're supposed to be. And those stories often live inside our families. Today, I want to talk about something that can feel uncomfortable, even taboo to say out loud, and that is breaking ancestral patterns, or what many people call cutting generational curses. Now, when I say that, I'm not talking about anything supernatural, although I must have a disclaimer here to remind people that we are mind, body, and spirit, and the spirit world, which is the fourth, fifth dimension, etc., does interfere with the world of matter. So you do have to take into consideration that there are otherworldly things that can also be influencing you at certain times. So this whole mastering your mind thing is super important. If you do nothing else, it's actually the most important thing we will ever do on this planet is mastering our mind and mastering our energy. So to get right into it, I am talking about energy dynamics and energy dynamics that repeat themselves throughout families generation after generation. And these show up as patterns of control, abandonment, emotional manipulation. It's the same script, different actors until someone basically decides to call cut. And that someone might be you. So let's break this down into parts so that we understand what is actually happening in this realm called family. It all starts with the invisible script. Every family has a script. Now, some families have beautiful scripts. They are super well written. They are supportive. They are creative. They are deeply, deeply loving. And if you are part of that family or you have a family like that, consider yourself unbelievably lucky because many families carry unconscious patterns on the negative side of the polarity spectrum. Maybe it's a line of women who weren't allowed to speak up. Maybe it's men who were taught that vulnerability equals weakness. Maybe it's addiction, narcissistic dynamics, abuse, abandonment, loss, physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, a belief that love must always come with pain. These patterns don't just exist in behaviors. They exist in energetic patterns. Children absorb these emotional frequencies the way radios pick up signals because imagine a child is like a sponge. They learn what love looks like by observing, what conflict looks like by observing. They learn how much space they're allowed to occupy in this world by observing. And who are they observing? Their family. The people they are the closest to. And if nobody interrupts any of these patterns, they just keep repeating generation after generation. The thing is, and people have asked me this several times because I've done a couple of podcasts about this, you can break these ancestral curses. However, breaking the pattern often requires walking away. And this is easier said than done for people because when I say walking away, I don't say walking away in anger, regret, rage or grief. I say walking away fully empowered in unconditional love. And this is the hardest thing you will ever do. Because if you do not hold unconditional love for the people who have done any harm to you in this life, you cannot heal. You will always remain in the lower vibrational energies of rage, regret, revenge, fear, and you stay there. If you walk away fully empowered in your light, you will feel so differently than running away or walking away because somebody annoyed you or you can't take it anymore or you're doing it for reasons that are not fully in your power. So let's get into this because I want to break down how you can walk away holding unconditional love. It's something that I have had to learn to do in my life. It is not easy to do. And sometimes, when you're walking into a room with certain family members that if you cannot hold love greater than the resentment that you hold for somebody, you shouldn't be in a room with that person. If you know that resentment, rage, any of these lower vibrational energies are high on the list whenever you're interacting with certain people in your family, then you should probably not be in their company. You can eventually break an ancestral curse and be in the company of those folk. However, You have to have gotten to a place where your unconditional love is so high that they cannot penetrate you. Let's start with looking at how abusive dynamics actually hook into your energy so we can see how to get it out and we can start to clear the path for love to come in. There's a lot people don't understand when we talk about toxic family dynamics. We go into the psychology of it, but we don't really go into the energy of it. And I know some people hear the word energy and immediately think it sounds abstract or mystical, but everything is energy. And what I am talking about when I say energy in this context, so that we can really work with it, is the emotional and psychological energy centers in the body that influence how we feel about ourselves, how safe we feel in the world, and how much power we believe we actually have. In many spiritual traditions, these power centers are called chakras. And what a chakra actually, the direct meaning is a wheel. And you can actually think of them as emotional operating systems that regulate different parts of our identity. So when somebody repeatedly abuses, manipulates, or criticizes you, those dynamics often start to attach themselves to these energy centers, almost like hooks in the nervous system. And the reason people struggle to break free is because they don't even realize that these hooks are there. They have no idea that they're being attacked in their energy. So even when the mouth is attacking you, those words have power. Those words have energy. Those words can command energy to move. People will say sometimes that when they're around negative people, they get headaches or they get nauseous or they get those weird, not butterflies in their stomach to, the kind that make you all giddy. They get like a feeling of dread in their stomach. That is how you know you're being attacked in your chakras. Okay. Now, the person doing it may not even realize that they're doing it because a lot of people do not have control over their tongue. They do not realize the power of their tongue and also the power of intention. Is that sometimes the tongue may be saying one thing, but the intention behind the words is saying another. Again, the energy behind the words is always going to be read clearly to a vessel who is open to reading energy. So this should be the first thing you want to practice, is really feeling a room, feeling how you feel when you're around certain people. So let's walk through the first 4 energy centers because these are usually the ones that are commonly affected by family dynamics. The first energy center sits at the base of the spine and is often called the root chakra. This center governs your sense of safety, ability, and survival. It answers this existential question: am I safe in this world? When a child grows up in an environment where there's constant chaos, anger, unpredictability, and upheaval, the root chakra can become destabilized. So if you were constantly afraid of someone's temper, walking on eggshells, worried about emotional explosions, your nervous system learned that the world is not safe. Now, this can manifest later in life as chronic anxiety, hypervigilance, difficulty relaxing, always expecting something to go wrong or the other shoe to drop. Your body literally learned to stay in survival mode and never got out of it. And it's because your environment demanded it. You never felt safe. Your body never relaxed. And as you get older, you can have chronic tension because your body is always waiting and bracing itself. So this is something you want to really feel out. Do I feel safe in the world? Take a look and see if your childhood put you in a situation where you were really feeling unsafe in your own skin. We move up to the sacral chakra. The second energy center sits just below the navel, and that is called the sacral chakra. This center governs identity, creativity, pleasure, and emotional expression. It's kind of the chakra that daytime television is made of. This one answers the question, am I allowed to be myself? Now, imagine growing up in a family where you're constantly criticized. Your choices are mocked, your emotions are dismissed, you're belittled. Over time, that energy begins to attack your identity, who you are in the world. You start to question whether your choices are right, whether who you are as a person is even somebody desirable to society at large. You start to internalize the messages that something about you is wrong. And this can show up later as low self-esteem, difficulty trusting your instincts, people-pleasing, fear of expressing yourself, feeling like you have to earn love. When that sacral chakra is wounded, you literally stop trusting your own voice. For those of you that deal with low self-esteem or confidence issues, this is the chakra that you really have to look at. You have to go in and really start to work on clearing those stories from that chakra, clearing those wounds, because that is where it's originating. Moving to the third center that sits above the stomach, this is the solar plexus chakra, and it governs confidence, autonomy, and personal power. This one answers the question, do I have a right to be in this world? In controlling or narcissistic family systems, this is the one heavily targeted because power is the first thing abusers try to take. They want to control you. They want to control every decision. You're constantly told you're wrong. You're always questioned. You're called a liar. Your achievements are minimized. Your internal sense of power starts to collapse when you're attacked constantly by these energies because you don't know where you stand in this world. This can manifest as chronic self-doubt, fear of making decisions, feeling powerless in relationships, and difficulty setting boundaries. And as we know from all these other podcasts that I've done, setting boundaries is key to a healthy emotional body. If you want to sum it up, it's like through this being attacked in this chakra, you slowly forget that you're the author of your own life. Somebody else is constantly taking power over you and away from you. And this brings us to the fourth center, which sits in the middle of the chest and is known as the heart chakra. This one governs love, empathy, and emotional connection. And it answers the question, am I worthy of love? In unhealthy family dynamics, love can become conditional. You're loved only when you behave the way someone wants, and you're rejected when you step outside that role. Over time, that creates confusion about love itself, and you could grow up believing that love has to include pain and sacrifice, guilt, or emotional control, which is why so many people later on find themselves repeating similar patterns in romantic relationships, and that's because the nervous system is wired for this familiar pain for love exchange. Now, we have a few other chakras that are also attacked here, but these are the chakras that are most affected by these negative ancestral patterns. And so this is why breaking the loop matters, because when we talk about breaking generational patterns, this is what we're talking about. Cleaning those energy systems, reclaiming your sense of safety in this world, your identity, your power, reopening that big, beautiful heart of yours. But you can't fully restore your energy if you remain inside the same dynamics that keep hooking into these centers. Meaning if you are still around these people or you're still playing out scripts with these people, you are still actively engaged in that drama. And that means that your energy centers are still actively being affected and negatively impacted. And so this is why breaking the loop matters. You don't want to punish people or get revenge on them. You need to reclaim the integrity of your own energy. Because when your energy becomes clean again, your intuition strengthens, your confidence returns, your creativity expands, your boundaries go up, and you begin to live from this internal authority that you created instead of a script that somebody else wrote for you. Now, when we think about the chakras themselves and the energy centers, and now we kind of understand the origin story of our own energy patterns. And this, by the way, is the Reader's Digest version, energy dynamics for dummies. Like there is so much to learn about this, and it goes so deep. And I can recommend books to anybody who's really serious about cleaning out those energy centers. But let's talk about why walking away matters and how that helps us to clean these energy centers. We need to get free of what is causing us the harm. Because the beautiful thing about the human machine is that it really is designed for self-preservation, and it can heal, and it can heal physically, mentally, and emotionally. I know this for a fact. I have healed this body from horrible things, debilitating anxiety, issues with digestion, issues with my stomach. I have had chronic migraines and headaches, all sorts of different things. The physical, I'm in the process of healing as we speak, using energy work through acupuncture and polarity therapy and other therapies that really help heal the mind, body, and spirit. And this is where people struggle because we don't want to admit that the thing that is pulling us down are the people that we are supposed to love the most. We are taught that family is everything, and this is a tribal survival sort of mentality that is not necessarily wrong. Again, if you have a family that has a beautiful script, I mean, there's nothing there for you to change. But if you have a family that has a toxic script, you are going to have to change those dynamics so the future generations, your children and your grandchildren, will not be victims of the same negative feedback loops that you and generations before you have fallen victim to. Because we're taught that family is everything, we are also told that loyalty means staying, love means enduring the bullshit, forgiveness means tolerating garbage. But energy dynamics do not work that way, friends. When a relationship is deeply entangled in manipulation, control, or repeated harm, your nervous system literally stays hooked into a loop and goes into survival mode and clamps down. Think of it like energetic cords. Every argument plugs you back into the same circuit. Every manipulation, every guilt trip, etc., it just plugs you back into that same circuit. You can try to heal while standing inside the storm, but it's really hard to see clearly when you're inside the pattern. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your own life is step outside the field entirely. And that doesn't mean you hate your family or that you're punishing them. It just means you're interrupting the pattern. You're refusing to continue the script as is. And you are taking your self preservation and perfect health and well being into your own hands. This is an act of radical self love. And energetically, it is the first step in breaking a loop. So now let's go into what happens after you leave. Here's the part nobody actually prepares you for. Walking away doesn't actually end anything. It begins a whole world of garbage. Because once you remove yourself from the dynamic, you start to feel everything: grief, guilt, anger, fear, sometimes even relief. It's a strange roller coaster of conflicting emotions, and it's all perfectly normal. But the one that I honestly found was the most difficult to navigate is the grief of what could have been. Not just the relationship you had with somebody, but the relationship you hoped for. The parent you wish existed or loved you. The sibling connection you had imagined. The family that maybe never materialized. That grief is real. And this is where forgiveness begins to enter the conversation. As I've talked about on a previous podcast episode, forgiveness is often misunderstood because it doesn't mean you're inviting somebody back into a dynamic that harms you. It's releasing that energetic hook that keeps your life tied to the pain. It's saying, I'm no longer going to let this story dictate who I become. And the first place forgiveness must begin, friends, is within you. You've got to forgive yourself. You've got to forgive all those people who were really only doing the best that they could with the information that they have and the tools that they have. Remember, everyone in your family is suffering from the same family dynamics. They are just processing it differently. Some people process it in high level ways. Some people process it in low level ways. And that's just how, I suppose, the paradoxical nature of life. Let's get to the part of forgiving ourselves first, because this is the hardest thing for people breaking family patterns because it's self-blame. You start to ask yourself questions like, maybe I should have tried harder, or did I say the wrong thing, or did I not give them a chance, or maybe it could have been different. Maybe it would have worked out if I did this, or if I just apologized. But here's the deal. You cannot heal a dynamic that requires two people if the other person is not willing to change the script. They have to be willing. You can't come to the table and say, I'm sorry if I hurt you. And they say, it's okay. Or they chastise you for it. You have to be able to meet somebody 50-50 where they can also take accountability for their actions and the harm that they may have caused you. And if you know that you cannot get that, then the only thing you can do is change your role. And sometimes your role means exiting the stage. Radical compassion is the key here. It really does become essential. You have to have compassion for yourself, for the younger version of you who is trying to survive, for the version of you who are hoping things that would change. And eventually, sometimes compassion even extends outward, right? Not because what happened to you is acceptable, but because many people are acting from these wounds that they just never faced. Looking in the mirror is one of the hardest things for people to do. It seems the younger generations are much better at it, but the older generations have a tougher time looking in the mirror and really facing the wound. Why? Because the wound is painful. Family patterns come from generations of unresolved pain that are sitting in our energy centers. Pain that maybe doesn't even have a name, but it is pain that has never been healed. That all being said, you don't have to carry it forward. You can be the person in your family who is brave enough to say the cycle stops here. This ends with me. So how do we do this? We're going to throw in a practical call cut practice here. And I want to leave you with this because it's something that you can do simply on your own. It's a small energetic practice you can do when you feel pulled back into old family dynamics. Here it is. When you notice yourself replaying an old story in your mind, an argument, a moment from childhood, or a conversation that is still very painful and very raw for you, pause, take a breath, and then say it out loud. Cut. Just like on a film set. Cut. In that moment, you're stopping the scene. And this is the moment where you start to ask yourself a simple question. Is this the story I want to tell? If the answer is no, you consciously redirect your energy. You might say something like, I release this story, or I reclaim my energy, or I am actively choosing a new role. Then you shift your attention to something that anchors you back into your heart space, whether it's your breath, your body, the room you're in. I like to think of something that brings me joy. Because for every tragic moment we've had in our lives, we have a moment of joy. Joy always finds its way back into the heart. That is the beauty of the light. The light brings joy if you're willing to look at it. When you're feeling these deeply painful things, really take that moment, call cut on yourself, call cut on the scene, stop giving it your energy and look at it from the place of compassion. Look at the other person through the eyes of compassion. Look at yourself through the lens of compassion, because every time you interrupt these loops, you weaken that pattern. And over time, the script loses its power. It's not easy work, but it's consistent. And the more you do it, the more you will realize that these hooks no longer have a hold on you. And that's the beauty of these energy dynamics. The more you strengthen the parts of your armor that are wounded or leaking energy, the more powerful you become. The more your mind masters, this is not my fault. This is not their fault. This is just a familial pattern that is playing out. Then we don't take those things seriously in that way anymore. We start to rise above it. We start to see it from a 35,000-foot view instead of seeing it from a 20-foot view. We start to feel differently about people in our lives because we've done the work to understand how we got to where we are, and we have compassion for their journey. And this doesn't mean that anybody's going to understand you. This doesn't mean that they may decide to walk beside you. They may not. I will give you an example. Me and my brother, we had a contentious relationship that was sparked by a lot of the negative familial patterns. And man, did it take us down a spiral. And no matter how many times we were trying to get our shit together, we were fighting, we were, not talking to each other. I mean, it just got to be this level of chaos that was like, what is this for? Until one day, we both had a conversation that involved an agreement to break the pattern, because we didn't want our children to have to suffer the same thing. We wanted our children to be friends. We wanted to be friends. We wanted this to end with us. And we had both done things to each other that were not cool, right? Family dynamics are a two-way street, no matter what anybody tells you. It is always a two-way street. We have now brought ourselves to this day, to this moment, to this time where we are great friends. Our kids are great friends. And man, was it work. And I will tell you from personal experience, this is not theoretical, this is embodied. You can do this work and you can absolutely heal relationships. I also have other relationships that I have healed through absence. I don't believe absence makes the heart grow fonder. I believe absence makes the heart grow wiser. The heart understands what is actually going on when we pull the energy out of dynamics that are harmful to us. We have to hold unconditional love. Unconditional love is the way out of these negative fear-based feedback loops. However, holding unconditional love for people who have caused us pain can be difficult. And if you can't hold unconditional love in your heart and be in the same room as somebody who's caused you pain, you shouldn't be in that room with them, because that energy will take you back down. You will know that this work has actually sunk in and you are healing when you can hold unconditional love in your heart and you can be in the same room as somebody who has hurt you and it doesn't affect you. This actually happened to me with a cousin of mine. I've had a contentious relationship with this cousin my entire life, and I love this person as a brother. One of my situations with this person is that I think about what it could have been if there wasn't all this interference and all of this drama between the two of us. But unfortunately, that is the road it went down. It ended up with me not talking to him and his family, and that started in 2020 and continues to this day, except we were brought together through the death of an aunt. And to his credit, he and I both went right up to each other, and the first thing we did was hug each other and talk to each other. And this maintained for the 2 days that we were in each other's company. Now, are we friends? Nope. Do we hang out? Nope. Are our families friends? Nope, absolutely not. But because the healing work was done, and I'm going to say or take a guess that probably on his end as well, that space was able to be held without drama because each person was fully in their own light. This is the magic of the work. The work can lead you down a bunch of different paths. It could lead you down peaceful coexistence. It could lead you to repairing a relationship, and it can also lead you to ending one, because sometimes closing the chapter on a book is exactly what you have to do. And when you close a chapter on a book, friends, you close out all the characters in that. And we're going to talk about that in another episode. But for now, we're coming to the end of this one. So I just want to swing it back to breaking ancestral patterns is not easy work. It can feel super lonely. It could feel confusing, but it is also one of the most courageous acts a person can take. Because when you change a script, you do not just change your life. You change the future of every single person who comes after you. You become the moment in the family story where the pattern ended and a new one began. Thanks so much for being here today. And remember, when the old script tries to pull you back into the same role, you always have the power to call cut. Thank you so much for joining me on Call Cut with Angelique. New episodes drop every Friday. If you like this content, please subscribe, like, share with your friends. And remember, folks, no matter what life gives you, you must always keep shining.